Welcome in this video, and here again we are going to do our next video on trigonometry. We are going to be explaining what we mean by trigonometric ratios. We have those basic ratios that we know. For example, if you take the sine of 30 from your calculator, you're going to notice that it is a half. But how can you work that without using a calculator? We are going to be explaining that using our unit triangle. So this is known as the unit triangle because you can see it has one unit over here, one unit over here, and one unit over here. Is an equilateral triangle, and we are going to explain using this triangle the meaning of trigonometric ratios. Now, for an equilateral triangle, therefore, we know all the angles on the three sides are, or the three vertices are supposed to be 60 degrees, and therefore this is going to be 60 degrees, this is going to be 60 degrees, and this is going to be 60 degrees. But since we have a line that is bisecting the angle, then here we're going to call as 30 degrees, and this is 30 degrees. And if you add the two, you should get exactly 60 degrees. Now, if we want to work out this very well, then we need to get the height here, the height of the triangle here, using this ratio here. Remember, this side, since this is an isosceles triangle, since this is an equilateral triangle, then we can find this distance from here to here is 1, and if we divide that by 2, then we have a half here, and we have another half here. So our task will be to find the height using these units. And of course, it's important if we know the Pythagoras theorem, which says that if you take the a squared plus b squared, you should get c squared. So we can use this one to be able to find the height here. Alright, so if you take this side to be the a, or the a, the b, and the c, then you can call this side the a. So you take therefore a squared, and you add that to half squared, you should get c squared, which is 1 squared. And of course, you notice that this is a squared is equals to 1 minus 1 over 4. And if you take the square root on both sides, 1 minus 1 over 4 is 3/4. And if you take the square root on both sides, then you notice that it's going to be root 3 over 4. If you take the root of 2, then you have a is equals to exactly root 3 divided by 2. So that is root 3 divided by 2. Very good. So we are now ready to work out our ratios because we have this length here. Now, to find the sine 30, we are going to use the 30 over here because we see we have this angle, and then we have a half here, then we have 1 and 3 over 2. Remember, sine from our previous video is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Now, the opposite in this case is going to be half divided by the hypotenuse. We get that's going to be opposite half divided by 1. That's going to be, so a half will be a half, because we said in our previous videos that the sine of theta is going to be the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. And if I can use different colors here, then you can have an S here, you can have an O here, and this is H here, hypotenuse. And also cos can be given by the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. If I can use different colors to represent the first letters. And lastly, we have the tan is the opposite divided by the adjacent. If I can use different colors, so that is tan of theta is equals to the opposite divided by the adjacent. Well, these colors are going to explain us to come up with something that is going to help us to really understand the formula very well. Now, we can work out for cos theta, cos 30. So again, cos 30, we come here and say, okay, cos is equals to adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. So 30 is here, adjacent is root 3 over 2, root 3 over 2, root 3 divided by 2, and we're supposed to divide that by the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 1, and therefore we notice it's going to remain as root 3 divided by 2. Now tan of 30. Tan is opposite divided by adjacent. So the opposite which is a half, the opposite which is a half, and we'll divide that by the adjacent which is root 3 over 2. This is like a half multiplied by 2 over root 3. And that's going to be exactly 1 over root 3. 1 divided by root 3. Very good. Well, we can also work out the sign for those, the sign of 60. The sign of 60, now we are going to use the 60 here because that is the angle that we want. The sign is opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Now, the opposite is root 3 over 2. The hypotenuse is 1. Therefore, the sign of 60 is going to be root 3 divided by 2. Now, we have cos of 60. The cos of 60 is going to be the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. So, the adjacent is 1 divided by the hypotenuse. It's, this is a half divided by 1, then you get half. And you have to notice something, that the sine of 30 and the cos of 60 are the same. At the same time, cos of 60 and sine of 60 are the same. If you try that in your calculator, you're going to notice the same. Now we can finish with the tan of 30, tan of 60. Remember, tan is opposite divided by the adjacent. Now tan of 60 is going to be opposite divided by the adjacent. That's going to be opposite is root 3. That is root 3 divided by 2 multiplied by 2 over 1. And that is root 3. Exactly root 3. So root 3. So those are the ratios of the angles of 30 and the angles of 60. Now what about the angles of 45? So if we consider a triangle, an isosceles triangle for that matter, which is right at this point, then we can have this angle being 45 degrees. 45 degrees is 45 degrees. Remember, these angles of an isosceles triangle are equal. Therefore, if we can work out the value of the hypotenuse using the formula here, the Pythagoras theorem, a squared plus b squared is equals to c squared. Then we have 1 squared plus 1 squared is equals to the hypotenuse squared, which we can call c squared. Then it means we have 1 plus 1 is 2. The value of c is going to be root 2. So this side is exactly root 2. Root 2. And if we can use the three sides to work out the three ratios, then we are going to notice that the tan of 45, tan 45, which is the opposite, divided by the adjacent. So if this is theta, opposite divided by the adjacent is going to be exactly 1, because it's 1 divided by 1. Cos is the adjacent divided by hypotenuse, that is 1 divided by a half, that is going to be not 1 divided by root 2, that is going to be 1 over root 2. And finally, we have cos of 45. Sorry, we have sine of 45. This is supposed to be the sine of 45. Sine of 45. Sine is the opposite divided by hypotenuse. So the opposite is 1 divided by hypotenuse is 1 over root 2. So try that in our calculator. If you have cos of 45, cos of 45 should be the same as the sine of 45. Exactly the same, and therefore the trigonometric ratios do not lie. So for you to understand this easily, we are going to take the reds. The red letters, that is this SO, you can call it SO, and then we have TOA. So that is the easiest way to know the ratios, that if you have SOHCAHTOA, this means that the sine is equals to the opposite of a hypotenuse, then the cos is equals to the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, and then the tan is equals to opposite divided by the adjacent. This one is going to be really helpful to you, for you to understand how to really get the point. Anyway, those are the trigonometric ratios. Those are the commonly used ratios. Now the sine of 30, cos of 30, tan of 30, sine of 60, cos of 60, tan of 60, and the three ratios, tan 45, cos 45, and sine 45, given as we have just calculated in our calculations here. So that's how it's done. Make sure you follow more videos so so that you can understand more about trigonometry. That's how we do it.